Hello, everybody. We will try and do something different today. Highwayman is a part of your prescribed text. It is a poem and a long narrative poem. As teachers of a language, we have been constantly trying to impress upon you the importance of learning speaking skills. Listening happens by default, reading too, writing, sometimes you are tested. But actual performing proficiency or performing skill is the skill of speaking. If you learn to speak with the right intonation, fluency, speed, and volume, half the battle of learning a language is won. One of the ways of doing this is to pick up a poem and start reading it and learn to recite it. Why should this be done? The music of a language is embedded in its poetry. If you learn to read loudly, meaning if you learn to speak the language, you also learn how to cultivate the expressions of the language, the drama of the language, to communicate with clarity, with emphasis, and communicate in a convincing manner. For this, you need to have interesting speaking skills, not just good pronunciation, but also effective pronunciation, effective expression, effective ways of making the other person attend to what you are saying. In order to do this, one technique that we can use is learning how to read poems. I have just taken one as an example with the hope that you will pick up many more poems and learn to try and read them on your own. I have picked up The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes, which, as I said, is a part of your text. Let us see how we can give an effective reading of The Highwayman. It is divided into two parts. Part 1 is about the highwayman, Bess, and Tim the ostler. The highwayman enters. He makes a grand entry with his wonderful dress and his appearance on a horse. He meets Bess, who is a beautiful lass, and has a very romantic communication with her. And all the while, you have Tim, who is also in love with Bess, the ostler, listening to this conversation and feeling very jealous. Let us see if we can bring out all these expressions, feelings, and drama through part 1. I start. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. He'd a French cocked hat on his forehead, a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of the claret velvet, and breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle. His boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jeweled twinkle, his pestle butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle under the jeweled sky. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark inn-yard. He tapped with his whip on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. He whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. And dark in the dark old inn-yard, a stable wicket creaked, where Tim the ostler listened. His face was white and peaked. His eyes were hollows of madness, his hair like mouldy hay. But he loved the landlord's daughter, the landlord's red-lipped daughter. Dumb as a dog he listened, and he heard the robber say, "One kiss, my bonny sweetheart. I am after a prize tonight, but I shall be back with the yellow gold before the morning light. Yet, if they press me sharply and harry me through the day, then look for me by moonlight. Watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." He rose upright in the stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand, but she loosened her hair in the casement. His face burnt like a brand. As the black cascade of perfume came tumbling over his breast, and he kissed its waves in the moonlight. Oh, sweet black waves in the moonlight. Then he tugged at his rein in the moonlight and galloped away to the west. This is the end of part 1. If you see, there were times when my voice became very gentle. There were times when my voice became very strong and assertive. There were times when my voice just was conversational. I'll come to thee by moonlight. Watch for me by moonlight. But when I say, though hell should bar the way, I become a little more aggressive. Then he rose upright in his stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand. But when she loosened her hair in the casement, his face burnt like a brand. So sometimes, when you convey the sound, it also conveys the sense of the emotion or the feeling or the situation. So it is important that you concentrate on how the words are pronounced. When you say tumbling over his breast, the word tumbling should convey the idea of tumbling, falling down, cascading down. And when you say black cascade of perfume, see, it's a wave of perfume. He kissed its waves. There's something passionate about that. So these are the ideas that you'll have to convey more through the sound and pronunciation and the tempo rather than just by reading out the poem. I hope you have got it. This is just a small clip of the Highwayman and Bess, romantically inclined at this point in time. We'll move on to part 2. Now part 2 is a little more dramatic, a little more expressive, and there is also violence in it. How do you convey that? You can convey it by writing long passages, but you can also convey it through the way you read and stress on words. Just follow me and listen. He did not come in the dawning, he did not come at noon, and out of the tawny sunset before the rise of the moon, when the road was a gypsy's ribbon looping the purple moor, a red-coat troop came marching, marching, marching. King George's men came marching up to the old inn door. They said no word to the landlord. They drank his ale instead. But they gagged his daughter and bound her to the foot of her narrow bed. Two of them knelt at her casement with muskets at their side. There was death at every window and hell at one dark window. For Bess could see through her casement the road that he would ride. They had tied her up to attention with many a sniggering jest. They had bound a musket beside her with the muzzle beneath her breast. Now, keep good watch, and they kissed her. She heard the doomed man say, "Look for me by moonlight, watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." She twisted her hands behind her, but all the knots held good. She writhed her hands till her fingers were wet with sweat or blood. They stretched and strained in the darkness, and the hours crawled by like years, till now, on the stroke of midnight, cold, on the stroke of midnight, the tip of one finger touched it. The trigger, at least, was hers. The tip of one finger touched it. She strove no more for the rest. Up she stood up to attention, with the muzzle beneath her breast. She would not risk their hearing. She would not strive again, for the road lay bare in the moonlight, blank and bare in the moonlight, and the blood of her veins in the moonlight throbbed to her love's refrain. Cluck, 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 cluck. Had they heard it? The horse hoofs ringing clear. Cluck, 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 cluck. In the distance. Were they deaf that they did not hear? Down the ribbon of moonlight, over the brow of the hill, the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The redcoats looked to their priming. She stood up, straight and still. Cluck, cluck, in the frosty silence. Cluck, cluck, in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her finger moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He turned, he spurred to the west. He did not know who stood bowed, with her head over the musket, drenched with her own blood. Not till the dawn he heard it, and his face grew grey to hear how Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, had watched for her love in the moonlight and died in the darkness there. Back he spurred like a madman, shrieking a curse to the sky, with the white road smoking behind him and his rapier brandished high. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon, wine red was his velvet coat, when they shot him down on the highway, down like a dog on the highway, and he lay in his blood on the highway, with a bunch of lace at his throat. And still of a winter's night, they say, when the wind is in the trees, when the moon is a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas, when the road is a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, a highwayman comes riding, riding, riding. A highwayman comes riding up to the old inn door. Over the cobbles he clatters and clangs in the dark inn yard. He taps with his whip on the shutters, but all is locked and barred. He whistles a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there But the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. So you see, this is the second part of the poem, which is pretty dramatic, quite passionate, sometimes violent and expressive. When you read it out with a lot of emotion and emphasis, you may feel that there is too much of drama here. It may not look good to read it like this. Obviously, you are not going to speak with so much of drama, but only when you learn how to express yourself, however exaggerated it may seem, will you learn to moderate your language when it is required. So, first learn the highest standards of the language through reading a poem which is the music of this language, and then you will learn to speak effectively and expressively and become very proficient in speaking skills. I do hope you have enjoyed listening to a reading of this poem. I hope you will pick up a few more interesting poems that you find readable and try and give it your own expression and your own interpretation to make it interesting. And in the final analysis, learn how to cultivate your speaking skills. Thank you. Hope you have a good day.